Okay, so let's go back to what we were talking about with standards. What is just the standard numbers for these? 44,100 is a standard sampling rate. We used to call that CD quality audio. If you were going to make a compact disc, an old school CD, it had to be at 44,100. That's what CD players need to read for a sampling rate. And it had to be 16-bit. And that's pretty good. On a DVD, a physical DVD, it had to be 48,000 samples per second. And I think 32-bit on a CD, or sorry, on a DVD. I think they had to be 32-bit. With digital files, there isn't as big of a need for standards. MP3s work a little bit different, but generally, when I'm recording, I'm working at 48,000 samples per second and 32-bit. If I look at this file, for example, this is at 44,100. If I go to export it as a WAV file, I can see here I can get a few different options for how to export it at different bit rates. I can go 16, I can go 24, 32, then I can go to these floats, which without getting into the math of a float, it basically means a lot higher than 32. So it's kind of like a multiplier. So 32-bit float is going to be a lot higher. 64-bit float is going to be a lot higher than 64. These ULAW and ALAW things, I don't really understand what these are, and some of these other options are much more obscure options. So I'm either going to leave this at 16 or convert it to 32 when I export it. So the standards aren't as important in digital files. We will later, I think, talk about the right settings to export something as an MP3 file for the different platforms, but you should always look that up. Like if you're submitting to iTunes, or sorry, Apple Music or Spotify, they will have standards that they want their audio files at. It'll be an MP3 with certain encoding, so certain sample rate and bit rate. And then there's a couple other things that go into an MP3 also. But as a general rule, 44,100 is good. 48,000, also good, slightly better. Beyond that, it's just recording these extra frequencies way up high that you won't really be able to hear. But you can record it if you want to. And bitrate, 16 is good. 32 is great. Under 16, you're going to start to get that lo-fi sound. You won't really feel that like video game sound until you get to like 8-bit or lower than that. There are effects you can use called bit crushers that simulate lower bit rates that get you that Atari game kind of sound. If that's what you want to do, you can look at that later. Okay, so that's kind of where we sit with standards for digital audio.